Not so many needles next time. Try a few leaves, you'll do just fine if you look a little more like me. Or the sycamore to the blackberry vine. Just let go your thorns, grow your branches tall like mine. We'd all be better if you looked a little more like me. Ooh, nah, but we don't all have the same soil. We don't all have the same soil. We don't all have, no, we don't all have.
Hello and welcome to the Goldberry Artisans podcast, a podcast mostly about knitting and a few other crafts that I dive into, mostly fiber related, and about learning as you go and being okay with making mistakes. My name is Emily and I'm coming to you from the beautiful state of Maine. Thank you so much for both new and returning viewers for either coming back or being willing to give a new podcast a try. So thank you so much. And you can find information to anything that I talk about in this episode at goldberryartisans.com, and I'm on Instagram as Goldberry Artisans and on Ravelry as Emily Ruth B. So today I am winging it. I don't have any show notes written down, which is normally something, well, has always been something that I've done. But today I either had time to record or I had time to write show notes. Because I typically have detailed show notes that I'm working off of, so I only had time to do one of the two. So I decided to record, so we'll see how this goes. So I just have 4 projects sitting in a basket, and I'm just going to talk about them and hope I remember all the details. First, I am going to start with my finished object. I can't even fit it all. This is, I have called this my Blue Castle scarf after the book The Blue Castle by Lucy Maud Montgomery. The pattern is the Tulip Fields Shawlette by Dawn Catanzaro, I believe is how you say her name. And it's from the first issue of the Making magazine. And the yarn is Manos del Uruguay lace, which I don't remember the exact fiber content, some sort of alpaca, cashmere, something. So I finished this afternoon. I thought about recording a podcast this afternoon, but I was like in the middle of the bind off for this, so I figured I'd bind it off. But that took longer than anticipated. So I'll get into that in a second. So I really loved working on this. It was super simple. This section was really simple. The lace pattern, so basically you knit the lace border vertically, and then picked up the stitches and knit the rest of the shawl and used short rows to make a sort of crescent shape. So you can see like this end is smaller than the center. So I really enjoyed working on this. I've been wanting to work on knitting more shawls, not just cowls. I love cowls, but I love like scarves, long scarves. And I figured this would make a nice summer project since it was using lace weight yarn, and it wasn't wool, it was alpaca, which is still warm, but it can often feel lighter and airier than wool, than just 100% wool yarn. So, and I know I've mentioned before the lace pattern was not super intuitive, and this is not blocked. I'm sure this will open up a bit more once it is blocked. So you can see it has like it's a scallop egg, and then like a zigzag pattern. You can see this is the beginning. I definitely messed up that stitch pattern, but then once I get into the rhythm of it, I kind of knew it was coming. And obviously the garter stitch has a lot of unevenness to it, just because it was lace weight on size. It's either 4 or 5 needles. I think it was size 5. But again, with blocking, that will hopefully block out. So I knew that the yarn that I was using had less yards in this. I had less yards in the skein than it was recommended for the pattern. So I had, while I was working this garter stitch section, once I got to the part where there are no more short rows, it was just going back and forth. Once I got there, I weighed my yarn to see, like before and after I knit one row, to see how much yarn it was going to take, like how much, like the weight of the yarn that it took to knit one row. And so then I thought, okay, I'm great, then I'll just measure as I get closer, then I can see, do I want to do all of the rows called for in the pattern, or should I bind off early? So then I get to a point where I said, okay, I'm going to weigh the yarn. The scale didn't even pick up the fact that there was something on it. That was how light it was. So I said, okay, I'm going to do the bind off. So, and it looked like I had enough yarn, but then I actually looked at the pattern, and the bind off used was one where you knit 2 at the beginning, and then you knit those 2 stitches that are on your right hand needle, where you would normally lift one over the other to bind off. You knit them together, and then that's put that one stitch on your right needle, knit a brand new stitch, knit those 2 together. So in that way it creates this lovely bind off it's perfect for garter stitch, because it's stretchy enough, so it has quite a bit of stretch to it, but it's not gonna flare, and it's not constricting the garter, and it's not flaring out. Like if I had done like a Jenny Surprisingly Stretchy bind off or something like that, it would have definitely flared out, and I would not have liked that. So it's a great bind off. The problem is that it takes more yarn than just knitting a row. So and I don't even know how many stitches. There's like 300 stitches maybe at this point. So I started bind off. Got partway through, realized I was not going to have enough yarn. I got about, it's almost halfway. If you look, it's like from here, almost halfway. And then I knew I was going to run out of yarn, but I really did not want to rip out the whole entire bind off, and that would also mean I'd have to rip back a whole entire row of the garter stitch to have enough yarn to bind off. So I went through my stash to see if I had any yarn that was a similar color and weight that would work, but I really don't have a lot of lace weight yarn. I only had fingering weight that was even close, but all of it was either too green or too blue. And since it was a thicker yarn anyway, it would stick out like a sore thumb. So I found some thread. I left the spool of thread inside, but I found some thread that was a close-ish color. You can see this is the yarn, and then this is the thread. And so I decided, oh here you can see, I don't know how well you'll be able to see, but there's the thread in the yarn. So I pulled a bunch off the spool and looped it over to double it up. And so I was using the thread doubled up just to make it a little bit thicker. And I mean, you can tell there's a difference, but it doesn't, from far away, it doesn't really stand out. But then, so I was going along, and then I got to here, and my looped over thread ran out. But that was why I hadn't looped it over and cut it. I just looped it over and was knitting from the looped over end and from the spool. So then I had about this much left just in a single thread. And you can see the difference between the doubled thread and the single, how these loops just kind of look like they're hanging out by themselves, almost, without anything holding them together. But the bind off worked. I made sure to knot the threads of end securely, and so I've woven in all my ends, but I haven't blocked it yet. Once I block it, then I'll see if they need to be secured anymore, and then I will cut them. So that was my adventures in binding off. And I would say this scarf is fairly reversible. Really the only difference between the right side and the wrong side, besides where I wove in the ends. The right side has this edging, which is because along this part, along the border, you slip this stitch of the first stitch of every row. So then it's got this nice loose border on this side and on this side, and then when picking up the stitches, where normally you would just pick up the top 2 bars of stitches, This, you picked up the stitches from behind that slip stitch edge. So you ended up with this nice defining line. So that's really the only difference between, this is the right side and this is the wrong side. Obviously that edge is not there. So you can see the difference, no edge up here, that edge down there. But I think because it's mainly garter stitch, in this lace pattern really is reversible. Like there's really no difference between the right side and the wrong side. So reversible, which is good for a scarf because then I can wear it however I want. I can wear it however I want, and it's not going to really matter if it gets twisted up because it's just garter stitch and lace. So yes, that is my only finished object. I have another project that honestly I could have finished, but again I'm running out of daylight, and so I just wanted to record, so I didn't bother finishing it. But I only have like maybe 2 more rows of ribbing to bind off left. So these are my An Untrodden Path socks. That quote is from the Blue Castle. I talked about it in my last episode. So this is the first sock. I think I had this one done last time. And then this is how far along I am on the second sock. The pattern is The Avenues by Mina Phillip of Knitting Expat, the designs, and the podcast. And this is part of her New York Sock Club collection. The yarn I'm using is unlabeled, that I had in my stash. So these, I did a rounded toe, although I realized when I started the second one I messed it up. So it's not really a rounded toe, more like a normal wedge toe, but oh well. And then a German short row heel. And then I'm just doing a 1x1 ribbing on the top. These are toe up socks. There's also, her patterns are super thorough. There are instructions for cuff down and toe up for all of her sock patterns that are in the club so far. And a lot of variations for how you want to do the slip stitch pattern in this one. So these have just been really good mindless knitting. I honestly don't work on them a whole lot during the week. There are a lot of my knit on Sundays if we're visiting with people or during my Sunday school class or whatever. So good mindless knitting. And I had thought that I would try to line up the yarns so that the socks would match up pretty well. But that didn't really happen. This is the first one. I just started the yarn where it was. What I should have done was make sure that I started it at the beginning of a section of color, because it's just sort of in the middle. So I didn't really know where to start this one. So they don't match up. And I'm just now realizing that maybe I started the ribbing too soon on the second one. Maybe a little bit. Yeah, I did. So it's a good thing I didn't bind it off. I think I'm going to rip back. You can see I was measuring it on my lap, which is probably not my wisest moment. So if you can see, I think I will rip out the ribbing. So the colors line up fairly well. It's very noticeable in the heel. How this heel has a lot more brown than this one does. Like, it just barely has the brown at the beginning of the heel. But, oh well. I don't know if these socks are going to be for me, or if I'll just put them away for a rainy day for when I need a gift. But yeah, so I'll rip that, gotta rip back this ribbing and fix it. But, it's a good thing I did not bind off in haste this afternoon. And I'm using Knit Picks circulars. These are size 2, and I'm doing magic loop on these. And I know this is actually a fairly small loop, and I would probably prefer a slightly larger loop, but because it's socks, they're small enough so that I have room. If these stitches are up on the needles and I pull this out, then I still have a fairly good sized loop on both sides. And do that for a long time would probably cause the cable to bend quite a bit, but it's fine for now. And then actually, not this week, but last week, I actually pulled out my cabled sweater, which is like amazing because I thought I was basically going to mostly abandon this over the summer. But we had a few cooler days, so I actually pulled this out. I'm calling this my To Waken Up the Flowers sweater. You can read the full quote that comes from on my Ravelry page, project page for this. But the pattern is Stonecutter by Michelle Wong. And I didn't have a progress keep or anything to show where I was, but I knit a good 2 inches on this, which 2 inches in this sweater can take forever, even if it is worsted weight. So yeah, I just thought I would show you. I did work on this a bit, and whenever I pull it out, it makes me want to work on it more. But it definitely requires a lot of concentration and space to like spread the charts out next to me so I can follow along. And one thing that I was worried about when knitting the back were these increases. These are yarn overs that you do to increase. And after reading through some other knitters' project notes on this one, I have been knitting the yarn overs through the back of the loop. But I was still worried that it looked like there's a lot of gaping, and that if it got stretched, you would be able to see the holes. But then once the whole back was completed, it looks fine. Like, you can't even hardly tell. And even looking at this, you really can't see it. Now, maybe if the yarn overs continued all the way up the sweater, it would make a difference. But since the yarn overs end here, and then the cable just continues going up, you really cannot tell. So I just knit them through the back of the loop, and they're fine. So I have one more project that I have been working on, and I had cast this on since the last time I had recorded. So last week, my sister and I went down to New York City we went down for 2 days. Like, we rode down one day, we're there, and rode back the next day to see The Great Comet. Well, Natasha, Pierre, and The Great Comet of 1812 on Broadway, which was amazing. And I haven't been able to stop listening to the music. It's beautiful. But I was nearing the end in all my projects, or they were not going to be good for travel knitting. And so I wanted a nice big project because we rode the bus down from Maine down to New York City. And so I wanted something that I could really work on, and I wasn't going to be worried about running out. Like, if I bring socks, then I'm always worried about, well, I need to pack another skein of yarn or another project, because I could very well finish these socks. So I had a shawl that I had started working on last summer, realized I was not going to have enough yarn to finish it, and then I didn't really like what I had done with it anyway, so I had frogged it. But I bought another skein of yarn, and so I still really wanted to make this shawl. Apparently I'm all about the garter stitching the lace. And it's really hard to show you because it's all bunched up on the needles. But this is the Waiting for Rain shawl by Sylvia, I can't remember her last name. Her design label is Soft Sweater Designs. And I'm calling this my Dust and Ashes shawl because that's my favorite song from The Great Comet is Dust and Ashes. And I'm using Quince & Co. Finch. I don't remember the colorways. Maybe Frost. I don't remember exactly. The information will be on my Ravelry project page, which I have yet to create. Oops. So yeah, I've really been enjoying this. It was perfect travel knitting because you had these sections of garter stitch in between, but then before you got bored, there's a short row lace section. And the original pattern is knit in all one color, but I liked the look of a lot of the ones that I had seen knit in multiple colors. And it was easier to get the yarn on Ravelry D-Stash if it was multiple colors in small quantities. So when I had originally knit this sweater last summer, I had 2 skeins of the dark gray, 2 skeins of the light gray. And I'd been doing some striping, but it was very random. It was like sometimes I would have 2 or 3 rows in a row, or 2 or 3 ridges in a row of the light gray, and I didn't think about it really. And I was moving some of the lace sections around, because Sylvia does include a hacking waiting for rain document where she includes information, you know, some ideas for changing it up, and you can just put the lace short row sections wherever you want. And so I've been like, oh, I'll move them around. I had one like way up at the top, and it was just, I didn't like how it looked anyway. I didn't like how I had changed it. Just didn't like how it looked. And I didn't have enough yarn. So I frogged it. I bought a 3rd skein of the dark gray, and I'm just following the pattern so far as where the lace short rows are. And I've just been thinking ahead a little bit of how I want the stripes to look. I want them to be the same on either side of the short rows. So like for this one, I've got 2 above and like 2 on either side, and then the one in the middle that's the same row as that the lace short rows grow out of. And then, let's see if I can find the lace section of this one. And then this one, I've got 3 rows on either side, or 3 ridges, sorry, not rows. And then I didn't have enough, there were not enough rows between this one and the next one to do a long pattern. So I just have the 1 row that the lace short row grow out of, and then I'm in the middle of this lace short row section. This is the last short row section, and then there's a little more garter stitch, and then the bind off. So I cast on the bus. It's about we were probably on the bus for a total of like 13 hours, maybe, something like that. But I knit from here to somewhere around here, possibly here, on the bus. It's amazing how much knitting you can get done when you just don't have anything else that you feel like you need to get up and go do, or you know, you don't have to get up and go to work. It gives you a lot more time to knit. I just caught up on some audio podcasts. Sitting on the bus, I got kind of car sick if I tried to watch like something on Netflix or on YouTube for too long, so I just did a lot of audiobooks and audio podcasts. But it was fun to just sit and knit. And this really was the perfect travel knitting project. So right now I still have pretty close to a full skein of my 3rd skein of gray, because I just started this one. It is a different dye lot. Let's see, but I mean, looking at it really closely, I can tell there is a difference. I don't know how well you'll be able to see it on camera, but this row and below are with the old dye lot, and this is with the new one. So there is a bit of a difference, but with the striping and the lace short rows, I figured it would not really be a big deal to have it be a slightly different color. And it is a very popular colorway, because I tried last summer when I was working on it, I tried to go on Quince & Co. on their website and order the yarn from there, but they were all out of this color. They had almost all of their other colors, but they did not have this one. And then I would keep looking on like on Ravelry D-stash pages, and I could not find any more of this gray color, which is actually, I believe it's the same colorway as the colorway that I'm using for this sweater, which is kind of funny. It's such a good gray color. But I did finally find a skein on, I think I got it on D-stash, because with Quince & Co. you can, even other yarn stores that stock their yarn, if those yarn stores sell yarn online, they cannot sell Quince & Co. online, I believe is how it works. If you want to buy Quince & Co. online, you have to buy it through them, if you want to buy it like from a retailer. So, finally got a 3rd skein, and then was able to restart this shawl. I've just been wanting to make shawls lately. I think it's because I want to be working on big projects, but I don't really have a ton of sweater quantity of yarn, and my only sweater is super cabled and not necessarily good summer knitting. So I have like 3 more shawls that I want to cast on, and that I have the yarn for. So I just want to work on all the shawls. And I'll be gone next week. I'm working the summer camp that I grew up attending with my family. I'm going to be working there next week, which is why I had to record a podcast episode today. Otherwise, no episode was going to make it for another 2 weeks. So I'm trying to think. I really will not have a lot of knitting time, but I'll probably pack a pair of socks to work on because that's more portable. Just carry it around with me. Maybe a shawl, cast on a new one. So, but I've been working this has been almost the only thing I've worked on since I cast it on last week. So that's why a lot of progress has been made. And I worked on this a lot. Yesterday was the 4th of July. And I spent a lot of time, I was knitting and reading, and then I knit, and my siblings went swimming, so knit by the side of the pool, a friend's pool, and just knit. And while I was knitting, I finally finished. I've been reading Ron Chernow's Alexander Hamilton biography. I started it last summer, but then kind of abandoned it over the school year because I'm reading nonfiction for school. So I tend to read nonfiction during the summer because during the school year I read it for school. So I want to read fiction during the school year to remove my brain from school mode to reading for fun mode. But I had picked up the biography again once summer hit, and I started yesterday. I had maybe 80 or 90 pages left. So I was like, it's the 4th of July. I have to finish this book on the 4th of July. I'm so close. So I was very excited, and I just sit on the porch and knit and read for forever, which was amazing. So, and I guess I'll mention a few things that I've just, my what's been making me happy lately segment. Definitely going down to New York. Hopefully I will put some of the pictures that I took in somewhere in the intro or somewhere. It was just so much fun to get away for a couple of days and that was the first time I'd ever seen a Broadway show, and it was the Great Comet. It's an interactive experience. It started out as a dinner theater thing, and then it grew to be on Broadway, and so there's people up sitting, there's the main part where we were sitting, like a traditional seating, but then there's people sitting on the stage and in chairs and tables on the stage, and even where we were, there's stairs going up to the mezzanine, which is where we were sitting, so the ensemble members and the cast members are moving all over the place and interacting with people. So it was just it was very different, and it was very cool. So I've been obsessed with the song Dust and Ashes, because Josh Groban plays Pierre, one of the leads, and that song was written specifically because he was going to be in the original Broadway cast and for him to sing, so it's beautiful. So yeah, there's that. And then I know I already talked about the Alexander Hamilton biography, but it was so good. Ron Chernow, the author, does a very good job of telling a story, so you feel like you're reading a story, but while still giving valid historical information and not just a novel about Hamilton's life. It's very factual, and it was cool because I love the Hamilton musical. I love the music, and so it was cool to read the quotes either from Chernow or from any of the characters' letters or direct quotes that Lin-Manuel Miranda directly put into the music for the musical. So that was cool. I would bookmark those pages just because I thought that was so cool. I just finished reading the book, what is it called? Living Danishly, I think is what it's called. I don't remember the full title. But it's about this woman and her husband. They live in the UK, but then her husband gets a job with Lego headquarters in Denmark. So they move up to Denmark, and she finds out that Danish people, it's like Denmark is the happiest country. So the woman is a writer, like a journalist. So she does all this research and to dive into just what makes Danes so happy. So it was just cool to be reading of something about a different country that was also from an outsider's perspective. So, asking some of the questions that I would have asked about the country and about the people and what they did and why they did it, that she asked because she wasn't from there. So it was just cool to read about how people in a totally different country from me here in the US, just a totally different country and just how they live. So that was really cool. And funny. It was funny. Yeah, I think that's just about everything. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you had a happy 4th of July and are having a good start to your summer. So until I see you next time, have fun creating, and I hope that you are learning from your mistakes. Bye.